we want a user to be able to see the to-dos without actually typing to-dos right here. So when the user visits our website, what we want to happen is actually have a button to click and say, visit my to-dos. Okay, so we're gonna create an anchor tag right here, and it's gonna go to /todos route, and we're just gonna say visit my to-dos right here. Okay, so remember the /todos route is gonna be picked up by our routes web.php file, and it's gonna get to the to-dos controller at the index method. And if we check out that controller, the index method is gonna fetch all the to-dos, and it's gonna return the to-dos view right here, and it's gonna pass in the data. And our to-dos view right now, which extends the layout, is simply gonna loop through all of that data and print it out. Okay, so right now if we go ahead and refresh this homepage, we have a visit my to-dos route. If I click on that, it takes me to my page. Next thing, how do we create new to-dos? Okay, so how do we insert data into our database? So now we have just reviewed the R, which is read data from our database. Now we're gonna see the C. So we are looking at the CRUD, the CRUD mechanism. So we have looked at the R, which is read data from our database. Let's go ahead and see about the C, which is create data. So right here, I'm gonna have an input that is gonna help us to create new to-dos. Okay, so I'll come to my todos.blade.php, and what I'm gonna do right here is have a horizontal line that separates this, and above I'm gonna have a row, because now we're using Bootstrap, and in that row I'll have a div column large 6 dot column large offset of 3, and this is just gonna centralize things for us. So right here, I'll just have an input dot form control, and let's go ahead and check that out. That's my input, and I'll just say this should also be a large input, and the placeholder create a new to do. Okay, so that's our input, and we'll give the name of this field to be to do. Okay, so that's our input right there, create a new to do. Okay, so if we want to create a new to-do, we should just type in right there and hit enter or whatever to submit the form, which we don't have yet. Okay, so we need to wrap our input in form tags so that it would be an official form that we can use to create to-dos. So right there, I'll just go ahead and say form, and the action would be a route that we'll define in a moment. And right here, I'll just paste in this, and I'll have to define the method. And this method would be a post, because we are trying to get some data and save into the database. So our method is post, and our route would be /create to do. Okay, so when we submit this form, it's gonna go to /create to do. So that's our form, it's set up. Now something is lacking from this form, which I'm gonna show you in a moment. Okay, so now that our form is set up, we are gonna need to listen to this route right here. So let's go ahead to our routes folder, and we need a new route to take care of incoming post requests from our todos.blade.php. So we'll call our route class, and would have a post method because we are receiving a post request, and would listen to the create to do right here. We'll define what controller is going to take care of this request. Okay, so we're gonna use our to-dos controller again, and right there we'll define the method. So I'll say store. Okay, so I'll have a store method on that controller that is going to take care of storing new to-dos into my database. Okay, so right there we've defined it. The next step is to define our store method. So I'll go to my controller right there, and I'll create a new public function, and that will be store. And since this is a post request, we will need to receive the request data. Okay, and Laravel already provides us with a request class that takes care of this. So right here, what I'm doing is getting an instance of the request, of the current request. Okay, and right here we are taking that instance into a variable called request, and we are injecting it into this method. Okay, so we are gonna use this data to actually retrieve the to-do that was passed in our form. Okay, so right here, just for us to see what's going on, I'll just say die and dump the request. Okay, so there we have it. But if we run it right now, let's go ahead, refresh, type in a to-do, and click enter. You see, token mismatch exception, verify CS csrf token.php line 68. We're receiving an exception, okay? And remember, we defined our create to do route, so it's going there, but it's giving us a mistake or an exception. And why is this? Laravel has a concept called CSRF token protection, okay? So CSRF stands for cross-site request forgery, okay? So Laravel does not want people or domains that do not belong to this application to interact or send requests in and out. So Laravel has a CSRF token that goes with every single request for protection, okay? So when we are trying to create a new post, we will need to pass in that token, okay? And Laravel provides a very simple function for this, okay? So we have CSRF field right here that must be passed in with every post request. And this CSRF field, if I go back and go a little step back and I refresh and I view page source and scroll down, you discover that right here we have 2 input fields other than 1. So right here type is hidden, the name is token, and the value is a token. Okay, so what Laravel is gonna do is it has an application token, and anytime we are trying to pass in a post request, is going to pick up this value in the request to make sure that our application is actually the one trying to mutate or change our database, and you compare this value with the application token, and if it matches, so if it matches the current application token, then it's gonna permit the request, okay? So at that time when we tried it out, we didn't have this token, and that's why it didn't work, okay? But if we go ahead and try it out now, we discover that we have our request from our to-dos controller is dumped to the screen. So now that's not really helpful. So what we would like to do is actually get all the form data that we passed in that request, okay? So I'll use this all method, and if I refresh and continue, you discover that now we're just getting the token and the to-do, okay? So never forget to define your CSRF field, and also never forget to give a name to your input fields in your form, so that Laravel will pick up the CSRF field and also will have form data. So now we are actually having that data in an array, okay? So an array called request all is going to give us all the data from our form. Now, how do we store this data in our database table? Remember, to do is in charge of interacting with our database, okay? So right here, we're just gonna say to do, and we'll get a new instance of the to do class, okay? And once we get a new instance of the to-do class, we now have to just interact with this as if we're interacting with our database row, okay? So right here, we'll just say to-do, and we'll say the to-do on the to-dos table is going to be equal to request to-do. So right here, we have to-do in the request. So we'll say the to-dos field in the database is going to be equals to request to-do. So this is our new to-do, and it's a new instance of to-do, and just think of this new instance of to-do as a new row in the database. So we assign the new row column to-do to our request to-do that we received from our front end, and then we just go ahead and on this instance of to-do we call a save method, and that's all. So we assign the different fields to our database. Maybe if we had an email field, we'll go ahead and put that there. We'll just say to-do email equals something from the request, and if we had maybe a name field, we'll say to do mail equals something from the request, and all that, okay? And after that, we just need to save, okay? So we just saved right there. So what do we need to do next? We need to redirect the user to a particular route. After we have finished this, what do we do? So we'll just say return redirect. So redirect the user back. Okay, so you see Laravel provides us with many helpful methods that we are just using. Okay, so return the user back. So redirect method back. Okay, so if we go ahead and go back to where we have our form and refresh, we create a new to-do. Let's just copy this and we'll just say we created this. Okay, and if I hit enter, okay, so right there we have to remove the die dump from there, so that we can actually process the rest of the function. So we'll refresh and we continue. You see, we are redirected back. And if we scroll down, you see, we created this. Okay, so now we've inserted a new record into our database. base. Okay, so that's how we do it with Laravel. We just instantiate a new instance of the class that is in charge of that database table, and we assign each column to the data that we want to assign. Okay, so in this case we have request to do, so we say the database column on that table to do's should get to do, and we just save it, and then we return the user back. So that's how we created a new to do into our database, and we've taken care of the C and the R. What's left is the update and delete.